Hello and welcome back. Today we continue our discussion on the European air quality policy with our last video. Do we need to redesign the European air quality policy and European policy making? What are the weak elements of this policy and how can the policy be improved? Do we need changes in the organization of the European policy making process, engage in experimentation, or propose a decentralization of policy making power? I want to welcome our local experts, which you already met in the previous video. Welcome to Katina Bonjeva, attorney at law of Ikimiev and Partners and representative of the Association for European Integration and Human Rights in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Ingrid Winter from the Air Quality Control Office of the Regional Government of Steiermark in Graz, Austria. Giorgio Arduino from the Emissions and Environmental Risk Office of the region of Piedmont in Torino, Italy, and Cor Lames, Mayor of the municipality of Schiedam from the Netherlands. Let's start. What are, according to you, the weaknesses of the air quality policy? Can this policy be further improved?
There are several weaknesses. The most important is that the European standards are lower than the guidelines of the World Health Organization. The second one is there's a gap between emissions and standards. Measures reducing the emissions from the source of pollution are really needed. There's a gap in time between those two. I see also a problem with long-term versus short-term. For implementing policies, short-term objectives are necessary. The objectives in the directive now are long-term objectives, and not everybody is walking as fast as he needs to reach the goals in 2030. So I applied as rapporteur for short-term reviews to control that the long-term is gained. And the last problem I see is that the system of emission tradings does not function. That has to do with the economic crisis of the last years. But the idea is to trade emission between areas to control pollution. But the reality is that it's because of the low pricing, the system does not contribute in any way to reducing the pollution. It's more an administrative system.
The policy should be improved. First point, in a way that the climatological conditions are considered in a better way. One could rethink the definition of emission limit values. For instance, is it necessary to have daily mean values? Because we have this big disadvantage, as I have already explained, of our high occurrence of stable atmospheric inversions, where it's really difficult to meet daily mean values for PM10. So another thing would be to set even more focus on the long-range transport of pollutants, so to improve collaboration between the countries and to try to get a common power to improve air quality. One very important thing would be also to better align with other policies, especially with the policies on vehicles, especially emission limits for diesel engines. This is under discussion now at the European level anyway, so let's hope that the result will be a good one for the air quality. There should also be more space to make local regulations. For instance, we had in Austria the example that there was one province made a sectoral driving ban for trucks, and then the European Commission said that this would be disproportionate restrictions to the free movement of goods. So there are different parties having different interests, and these have to be aligned in a better way and hopefully in a way that improves air quality, or is in the sense of improved air quality. And also one issue in this alignment question or question of alignment of European policies would be also to align better the agricultural policy, because here it's also difficult to force agriculture to set measures. And if we look, for instance, at the BUD conclusions that have been released now recently for the intensive rearing of poultry and pigs, I have to say that the emission limit values for ammonia are not really very ambitious. So there could be more ambitious limit values that also help to reduce the emission of the PM precursors.
So can we make some changes in this policy? Is it, for example, the case that the way in which, let's say, policies are developed at the moment in this field should be changed, or is it a matter of, let's say, more political courage on the side of, for example, the different member states?
No, it's both. We see that the traditional Western European member states are in head when you compare it with Eastern European countries. But I see another objective, and that's start with integrated policies. In the Netherlands, we are used to integrate between spatial planning and traffic, or between environmental policies and economic affairs, or between policies of the national and the local government. That is a kind of integrated policy. We miss that in the European Union. For instance, the lack of cooperation between DG Energy of the European Commission and DG Environment is too great. It's a real problem. I see another point of investment, and that is create an impact assessment. Think about the measures you want to take, and ask yourself: is it possible to gain that results? Do I have the possibility to realize? We see too much that the European legislation starts top level, top down, and doesn't look to the question: are local and regional governments in the possibility to enforce these measures? And my plea is: take care that local and regional governments are involved in the legislation on the European level, so that the implementation is better solved.
I also noted from your plea that you actually are indicating that sometimes we also have to learn and understand how we can address certain problems. To what extent might experimentation help in order to gain this knowledge and to improve policy making?
Now, I mentioned it, the cooperation between two DGs of the European Commission is very important. Another one is includes more than now the expertise and experiences of the local governments in drafting new legislation.
If you have a quick train, you can live somewhere where you like and work somewhere where you have your work. If you don't have this, and you spend 1 hour by car, you spend a lot of time to enter in the city center, you don't have possibility to change the system for your mobility. So intermobility between cars and trains and bus and metro and so far and so on. You have the much emission or the much level in center, but many of these have to be managed. So the law that put resources and can obtain success to manage in a large area.
And that would mean that, let's say, also the decision-making procedures, perhaps at the European level, including the role of the Committee of the Regions, should be changed.
Yes, it should be a part of those new impact assessments that are now introduced in the European Union, and not only in the environmental part of the job, but in a more broader space. It's part of the better regulation program of Mr. Timmermans. When you think about legislation, think also about the effects 2-3 years later, and is it possible to gain them? But in this case, my plea is indeed organized that local governments are more involved with new legislation.
Given the fact that policies are being implemented by regional and local governments, who have lots of, let's say, information and knowledge and experience with the implementation of those policies, would it make sense to give those governments a bigger role in these kind of policies?
There are already some initiatives and some possibilities to bring in the opinion of the regions and also the experience of the regions, the expertises of the regions, but of course to have this in a better structured way or better organized form, this could be a nice chance to improve air quality at the European level, yes.
At the local level, citizens feel the impact of European policies directly. Cities need to work in an integrated way, an invisible way to address this impact. That's one. But second is, use the experience of local authorities in application of European rules. It's so necessary to design the new EU policies. For instance, Timmermans is redesigning the governance of the EU. There's also a commissioner in the European Parliament active on that. And better regulation is also better government. And better, and that can also be less governance. When there's an environmental problem, there is not always a new legislation needed. In the case that I called it the multi-level governance, is necessary that Europe sometimes decides not to put on new legislation.
I have lost this battle when I was in the Commission, because usually it is for many directorates, especially for the environmental directorate, was not usual to speak directly with the region. And the new policy put an advantage to speak with large towns instead of regions. I personally believe that this could be a mistake, not a big mistake, but could be a misunderstanding.
If we think about European policy and policy making, one of the questions I would have is, well, can you advise other citizens in Europe how to handle their problems if they have a problem with European policy? And especially in your case, you move to the court system in order to indicate that the policy is not working. What would be your advice? Is this a direction which is quite open to them or not? So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
As a lawyer, I should say that people should bring law cases and maybe claim damages. As I mentioned, our case is not about money, but money can change something, sometimes think. According to me, I have an opinion about Bulgaria, but after 5 years of trial, which is still going on, and after significant costs and expenses paid by us as plaintiff, because we needed to cover all the expenses from the experts the court heard, I'm not sure that it's very effective. Although we are using every court hearing to recall about the problem, we speak to the media, and in fact the municipality is also using the case to apply with projects for funding. Last year there are a lot of bicycle lanes made in the whole city of Plovdiv, and these were all funded by a project the municipality applied for. We also have a lot of hope on the trial in front of the European Court of Justice that the Commission brought against Bulgaria, but in fact, I think we just need more patience.